So you're playing Genshin, you're doing a 10 pull, and you get 5-star Citlali. So what do you get with Citlali besides a pillow-dwelling light novel addict? Well, Citlali is a catalyst-wielding cryo user who actually uses melt and freeze reactions to make the enemies weaker to pyro and hydro. And in this video, we're going to look at the basics of Citlali. Now, Citlali's normal attack should be pretty normal for a Catalyst user. They're going to always do cryo damage. We're not doing shenanigans with like Eye of Perception and things like that. She does throw these pillows. Her charge attack is really cool though, because her charge attack also uses the same thing that Oreo and like the owl bats do, where she can interact with those special murals around Natlin. And of course, if you hold spacebar, she's going to fly up like Oreo or the owl. She's just the 5-star version of Oreo for the overworld Natlin exploration, right? Now, her kit really starts to come together with her skill. Whenever you use her skill, it is going to do an instance of AoE cryo damage, as well as putting this little guy on the field, as well as making a shield that strength is based off of Citlali's EM. Now, for right now, this is all that her skill does, until you get her Night Soul points above 50. That is where she enters into her Night Soul's blessing state. Now, we're going to talk about other ways to get Night Soul points up, but let's just say that we get it above 50. And once we get it above 50, it starts to drain it. The little guy is going to change colors, and he is going to constantly be dealing off-field cryo damage. It's going to cause like this cryo storm to kind of swirl around you. This applies a ton of cryo to your enemies for more reliable freezes and melt reactions when you swap another character on, like Arlecchino. Now, using her skill does not give you 50 Night Soul points. It only gives you like 24, so just under half. So we need to look at other ways to get up Night Souls points. If we look at her first passive, whenever this little guy, it's Papa, I believe its name is on the field, after nearby party members trigger a melt or a freeze reaction, which Citlali can do, or in this team, Arlecchino or Benny, anytime that one of those reactions is caused, the resistance of the opponents to Hydro and Pyro is going to be decreased by 20%. This is where we get some shredding action from her shield. She will also gain back 16 Night Soul points when that happens. Now, her other passive mainly gets up her damage, but during her elemental skill, when it's Papa's Frozen Storm damage is increased by a percentage of her elemental mastery. And then her burst is increased by 1200% of her elemental mastery, which is crazy. In addition, which is that little part at the very bottom, when nearby party members trigger Night Soul's burst, which again, I want to correct this real quick. I've been saying it's any burst that a character does with a Natlin character in the party. That's incorrect. It's whenever elemental damage is done with a Natlin character in your party, anybody. And the more Natlin characters you have in your party, the more often you can cause a Natlin burst. And you're going to see this symbol pop up on the screen when you've successfully triggered a Night Soul's burst. So it doesn't even have to be their burst, it just has to be elemental damage with a Natlin character in your party. So when a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul's burst, she will also regain 4 Night Soul's points. So now we've got using her skill, Night Soul's burst, and causing a melt or freeze reaction when the little pillow guy is on the field. That is now 3 ways to get up Night Soul's points. The 4th one is to simply use her burst. Now, whenever you use her burst, she's going to actually hit different enemies with cryo. This can cause a melt reaction, which can also, get up your Night Soul's points, but just using her burst alone will give you Night Soul's points. Now, there is like a follow-up effect. She will also hit 3 enemies within an AoE with this kind of, it's called like the Spirit Vessel Skull. It's like a delayed instance of cryo damage that's going to hit up to 3 enemies. And this will deal cryo damage, as well as giving her more Night Soul points from that second instance. So the burst gives a ton of Night Soul points over to Citlali. So it's very, very important to have enough energy recharge on Citlali to use her burst. You kind of really, really need her burst. And we're going to talk more about that whenever we get to the artifacts. So now if we use her skill and her burst together, as well as causing some melt reactions and some Night Soul's burst, you can see that we can get a ton of Night Soul points onto her to where it's Papa, I believe his name was, will be able to change its form and stay on the field with Arlecchino longer to then hit the enemy with cryo, so that way Arlecchino can get melts, as well as giving her a little bit of shield, right? Which again goes with Citlali's elemental mastery, which is great for her doing damage with melt reactions as well. So now we're going to look at artifacts and weapons. Now my Citlali is level 80, but her weapon is like level 50 something, and some of her artifacts are not leveled because I haven't gotten the main stats that I want. So be nice in the comments about my Citlali's artifacts, please. Now her best set is going to be Hero of Cinder City, for 2 2 reasons. Yes, it's a buffing set, but the 2-piece set, whenever a nearby party member triggers the Night Souls burst, is going to give her energy, which is going to be good for getting her burst more readily available, because remember, we need that burst. The 4-piece set is going to be causing a reaction with the elements involved in the reaction is going to give a buff to those reactions. So if Citlali causes a melt reaction, then cryo and pyro damage is going to be buffed. And then if they're in Night Soul's Blessing, it's going to buff it even more. So this is a really, really good artifact set for Citlali. And if you are running this artifact set on Citlali, it also allows you, like if you were to use Shilinin as well, you can swap Shilinin over to something like Archaic, right? Because these 2 Cinder Cities artifact sets can't stack. So like I swapped my Shilinin over to Archaic just to increase Arlecchino's damage even further. So you can use like Citlali and Shilinin together, just change around Shilinen's artifacts. Now for the main stat on these artifacts on Citlali, I am using an ER Sands, then I will be using an EM Goblet, and then either crit rate or EM Circlet. I'm still kind of deciding if I want to leave that crit rate Circlet on her, because I really, really like it, and I am getting some EM for it, and she's got like over 400 EM without any EM main stats. She's already doing pretty good because I have her signature weapon. Now you don't have to run an ER Sands if you have an ER weapon or you use a different weapon, but because I'm using her signature that's going to get up Elemental Mastery, I am going to run an ER Sands because, again, I really, really need her burst. And with this, I can use her burst off of cooldown, having that ER Sands. Now, speaking of weapons, you do have a couple of options for her. Her signature Starcaller's Watch is going to be very, very good because it's going to get up EM. It's going to get a ton of EM over to her, especially whenever it's fully level. And after Citlali creates a shield, swapping to another character, whatever character has that shield is going to get a damage bonus as well. So this is a really, really good weapon for her if you do not have her signature. You do have something like Sack Frags, which is really good because it gets up EM, but it also gives you double skill proc, meaning you can use her skill back to back, helping with that energy problem where you need her burst. So you can use her skill twice, or you can use her skill once. If you don't quite have enough energy, then you can use it again. You just kind of got to be careful in the timing. But this will allow for you to produce more energy for Citlali. So you may not have to run an ER Sands. You might be able to get as much ER as you need in the substats of those artifacts. And she can actually really use Fruit of the Fulfillment, the Sumeru craftable weapon. Yes, this is going to get her up ER, but upon causing an elemental reaction, you can actually get EM on her. And I was able to trigger this reliably 4 times with her, giving her roughly an extra 100 EM at R1. With refinements, you could very easily get a ton of EM over to her and ER on her with this weapon. So finally, we have a character that can actually pretty good use this weapon. And then, of course, you do always have the good old reliable Thrilling Tales. I feel like this one's going to be a little bit harder to get a good amount of EM, a good amount of ER, because this weapon doesn't help with either of those. So if you can get a good amount of ER and a good amount of EM, then Thrilling Tales is going to be really good on her. Now that is going to be it for this video. Citlali kind of has like pinkish, whitish, purplish hair. I've got blue hair, and I'll see you in the next one.